Hey guys, first of all, thank you for coming to watch a talk. I'm Ana Ribeiro, the creator and creative director of the VR game called Pixel Ripped, and I work with ARVORE Immersive Experience. I'm talking to you guys actually straight from Brazil, and I'm here together with the team, and we're gonna be sharing with you guys our experience of using affective memories to increase immersion in video games. Okay, before we start the talk, I think it's really good to explain a little bit what is our game about and where we got all this experience in working on affective memories to increase immersion in the game. So Pixel Ripped, it's a series of games. We already released 2 episodes. We like to say that Pixel Ripped, it's a love letter to the history of video games, where you play video games the way it used to be in the past. And Pixel Ripped 1989, for example, you playing the game within a game, which is also called Pixel Ripped. And that game, you're playing in a kind of like a Game Boy device, where you're playing like a platforming game that reference like classics from that era, like Mega Man, Sonic, Mario, Super Ghosts and Ghosts. But that game also has a story and characters and things going on that to complete that game you have actually to deal with your reality. So it's kind of like a game about being a gamer, and the strongest thing about Pixel Ripped, it's of course the nostalgia and bringing players back in time like a time machine and feel like a kid again. So I have been working on this game for now 6 years and over the years I have been going to many events and listen to a lot of feedback from the players, looking to many reviews, and constantly the people that love the game the most are the ones that have an affective connection. The ones that come and say, look, I felt like a kid again. This is amazing. I remember now how it was to playing games. And they kind of got related to their own childhood memories, and they kind of comparing situations they have been also similar to the ones in the game. So knowing this was an important feeling we want players to have, we decided, okay, let's enhance this. But how can we enhance the inner child memories in players? So we came up with these steps that we try to make it more present on the second game, and it really increase the experience of the inner child experience. One important thing we realize is the familiar connections. When you're playing a game, you are not just playing a game. I don't remember just playing that game separated from where you were. You remember playing a game in a situation. I was playing a game at home or some kind of situation. You remember playing that game in a surrounding. For example, I remember playing Sonic the Hedgehog when I was 8, 9, and I was like playing really quick the game because I had to finish before my brother came back from the English course. Because if when he came back, he would go play. The video game was his video game. So for me, playing Sonic, it reminds me of that situation. Not just Sonic itself, but the experience and of playing that game so quick, so I could have to finish before my brother came back. So I'm pretty sure that many of you here watching the talk will have different experience and memories of Sonic that totally changed the game for you, the memories you have from that game experience. Another really important thing is making those environments where players were playing the game familiar, right? Surrounding walls that people understand and believe. They're like believable places. They're not fantastical. They're like, okay, I'm in a classroom, and I have been in a classroom. Most of players had been playing games in the living room, watching the TV. Most players had been playing late at night before mom comes back and take them out from the game. So people look at those places and they in their brain makes a connection. They make them feel really comfortable. Okay, I'm here. I believe it's believable. I'm in this place. And engaging game. We noticed that when the game itself that you are playing, we call the in-game, which is the game within the game. That game needs to be engaging, it needs to be good. Like, it needs to be something that players will be focused on, that will be like it needs to be a challenge game in reference to the good games that we grew up playing. If the game itself is not engaging, we notice that players wouldn't have that connection with their memories and wouldn't feel that immersed, because they would start like looking around and feel bored and totally not get to the point where we want, which is to make them feel totally immersed and believe they're playing the good old games that we used to play. When you have all this together and the player is feeling really comfortable, this is the place we want to get. Player is totally comfortable. He's in a place he feels his brain is like making him kind of forget the surroundings, because he's like, okay, I'm here, and totally focus on the game. That's when we have the moment we call the ice in the cake. When players are feeling totally like in a comfortable zone, and boom, we break and we do a twist in the game. Like, you're actually living the things you wish it happened, right? And that's the cool thing about it. We are not just recreating a simulator, we are actually exploring boundaries that we could never explore before without VR. Okay, so we know the formula, we know it's important, and then we decide, okay, how we put these elements and introduce all these elements throughout each area of the game, so we can erase these inner child memories. I'm gonna talk a little bit about game design elements we did. I'm gonna show you here an example of level 2, where you are in a rental store and you have 2 game setups. If you see over here, when you get to the Sonic game reference, which is the red raccoon, we have one of those loops of Sonic that the Sonic would go and fly around the loop. Players will be like kind of expecting okay, I'm gonna go through the loop, I know that. But then the cool thing we do here is that we kind of twist the things they are used to, and to kind of surprise the player. So what you have to do here is that you stuck on this loop, you have to go in the other game, grab a grenade, and then go back to the Sonic loop and then destroy it with the grenade. So when we started the game, we did a huge research and a huge list of games we wanted to reference from the 1995 era, and also real world situations that we would like to reference. We basically all got our childhood memories and start talking. Now I remember this happened to me and that happened to me. In this level, for example, it's level 3. You are in your bedroom at night and you playing a game hiding from your mom, because if she comes and see you awake playing video games, she's gonna turn it off your game. And you are playing this Castlevania like Metrovania game style, which players are really familiar to both situations, right? The gameplay and the reality. In this level, when you find some traps, there's some specific traps in the level that make a really loud noise, and you have to avoid those traps throughout the level, because just these traps will actually trigger your mom to come, and she will come and turn off your video game, and then you start over again. So it's a really cool way to do a mechanic that combine these both worlds that you are familiar with, but do a twist and then make something new with that, right? For example, at this boss fight, you are in the back seat of your car, and your father is like driving the car, and I think that's a really cool memory that many people may have over here. You probably remember being sitting in the back of the car, and then you have like your cards around you, like you got figurines, you just came back from the rental store with new games, and you can get the boxes and smell it. And you can't smell yet in this experience, but in the future. But then you have all these toys around you, and you have this like feeling of like a childhood, right? Child, like, wow, I'm here surrounded by my toys, I'm in the back of my seat. And then you see the game characters right in the back of the street, and you're controlling that character like over there. And it's really crazy but fantastical, but it's also plays with the things we wish it actually had happened. Here we have a cool mechanic from Mario Kart. For example, you throw in a banana but you are sitting in the back of the seat and you kind of like play totally away, all the way around it, like Mario Kart. You're actually playing backwards and not forwards to help your character to pass through this enemy, this boss. So it's kind of like using mechanics we know, but twisting it in, to make this new things, and also not just playing with that memory, but also making that much more awesome, the way we actually wanted that always happened when we were a kid. I'm gonna now pass the word to Barbara, a narrative designer, which is gonna be talking about these elements, how we implement those elements in the narrative in the game.
Thank you, Ana. Hi, everybody. I'm Bárbara, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the narrative design in Pixel Art. First, I think it's important to point out that when we talk about creating an immersive universe in VR, it's not only about the universe itself, but how you make your player fit in that universe. In our game, we have the challenge that the player is not going to be a blank avatar or a bodiless presence. They're going to embody our characters. The heroine Dot when they're inside the video game, and the 9-year-old boy David when they're in the real world. So the players actually experience the universe through their perspectives. And if they don't feel connected to the characters, it creates an emotional distance that makes the whole universe feel less immersive. And that's actually one of the most important ways we use affective memories in our narrative. Because establishing that connection, with David in particular, had a lot to do with helping the player remember how it was to see the world as a kid. So it wasn't about recreating the most realistic 90s environment. We had to figure out how we wanted to frame that world, what made it so special for a kid growing up there. And when you ask people to tell you their childhood memories, you realize they might not be remembering exactly what happened, but in that moment, they reveal what really matters to them, what stayed with them throughout the years. And during our brainstorming sessions, as I heard our team talking about their own experience, their memories were so mixed with fantasy, with their favorite fiction at the time, with the stories they had been told, and sometimes they could be talking about the most mundane situations, and they could still make it sound like this mind-blowing, unbelievable experience. And it became pretty clear that that was the point of view we wanted to share, that a lot of our audience could relate to it. We wanted to see the 90s through the eyes of an over-imaginative child who always finds wonder and excitement and makes everything so much bigger. So eventually, that sort of hyperbolic, over-imaginative perspective was something that shaped everything in Dave's narrative. It's in the way the other characters are presented, it's in how we approach the conflicts and the rewards, it's in the pacing of the story. Everything is rooted in reality, but there's this aspect of exaggeration that makes everything more intense and overwhelming. And a lot of that comes from gameplay and story working together every step of the way. For example, in the part of the game that Ana described, when Dave needs to play after his bedtime and he can't wake up his mom, this was supposed to be a very tense moment for the players. But if we portrayed it as realistic as possible, it wouldn't be the same. Because a situation like that can be really scary for a little kid. But that's mostly because back then we felt powerless over the grown-ups. You could feel like your mom was this superhuman being who's always 2 steps ahead of you, but that's not actually true. So the same situation for an adult can be just too easy and stale. So in the game, the mom needed to have that advantage over the player. She needs to have the amazing hearing and super speed we feared she had. And since the players are so invested in the game within the game, the possibility that she could show up at the slightest of noises and turn off their console makes them actually feel like a powerless kid. And it's really rewarding to watch these grown adults playing that level, all quiet and cautious, and then jumping on their seats when they hear the moms come. So In the end, the exaggeration makes the situation less realistic, but the feeling you get makes you closer to how David would be feeling. And at the same time, looking for real life inspiration made it easier for us to go back to a more naturalistic representation when we needed to. For example, the characters, they are introduced as more of these easily recognizable archetypes, because that's how David sees them. But since they're based on real types of real people, they also carry a layer of ambiguity. So even in David's childish worldview, people aren't all good or all bad. That's why his mom can be caring and devoted and still be sensitive sometimes. Or his neighbor can be a bully to him in a second and then be bullied by someone else in the next. And as the story unfolds, it feels natural for the characters to show more of their complexity and vulnerability. So, overall, our story comes from a personal place, but that doesn't make it restrictive. It's what makes it feel real, even when we're portraying a fantastic, hyperbolic world. And when the players can relate to that world and feel an emotional connection with our protagonists, they feel more in control of the narrative and they can lend a little bit of themselves to the story. So, in a way, their experience becomes their own unique version of our game. Thank you, and I'm going to pass the word to Rodrigo Blanco, our art director.
Hello, my name is Rodrigo Blanco. I'm the art director for Pixel Ripped 1995, and we'll be talking about some of the art elements and choices we made for the game. So, when talking about Pixel Ripped 1995, we came to a great dilemma, and that is that we needed to portray a version of the 90s that kind of spoke to everyone, people from all over the world and different cultures that experienced the 90s in different ways. So how do we make a game set in the 90s that is universal for everyone? The choice we made was actually set it in pop culture, in the media that we used to consume in the 90s, for those who were around back then and people who came later that went back and consumed media from that time. We set the game in a version of the 90s that would only kind of exist in TV shows and Hollywood movies at the time. So the style is very exaggerated, like it was in TV shows back then. People used to wear all these crazy clothes that we rarely saw in real life, and it was only ever consumed in media. That was actually very good for us because in that way we could transport the user to a version of the 90s that they actually recognized, even though they would be from somewhere else in the world. Everyone kind of like got used to these media and all of these movies and series. Where the real world was a caricature of the 90s, we kind of had to go the opposite way for all of these mini games and all the in-game interactions that the user plays in Pixel Ripped. We needed to make the games as grounded as possible. That way it could be recognizable to people that used to play these games or play these games nowadays through emulators or even remasters of these games. So we couldn't deviate as much. We couldn't make them a stylized version of themselves like we did with all the real world elements. And also, since Pixel Ripped is a franchise that kind of goes hand in hand with the comedy, we felt that the contrast of the mashup that these games bring when we like mash them together was very comedic and funny in a way, and also it kind of like played to that fantasy that we used to have, that gamers used to have that back then when thinking about mashing up all these games and playing kind of a amalgamation of all these favorite games they had. Also, another thing that was very important for the mini games is that we kind of took the same shortcuts that people back then used to take for making these games and creating all of these visual assets. Um, that way, that actually made it more visually faithful to the games back then, while also helping us with our production. An example of this is that Dot doesn't have sprites for both directions. What she turns, it's just a flip of the sprite sheet. That is actually very cost effective, and they used to do that back then for all of these games, for most of these games actually. And it kind of brings back that memory, right? When you're playing and you see, you actually perceive that as a kid. Also, it was very important for us to acknowledge the visual representation, as you would see in this slide, of gaming media back then. It was from a time that like all of these secrets and tips would come to us once a week, sometimes twice a month, through these gaming magazines instead of instantly through the internet as it is nowadays. On this next slide, it was also very important for us to acknowledge the fact that back then we didn't have gaming demos or open betas. So the only way a kid would actually try out these games was either going to a friend's house when they used to have this game, or to the local rental store, which is how most of us remember actually experiencing new games back then. In this slide, we also needed to make an homage to all of these characters from all the games that were very dear to us back then. It's our way of kind of spoofing them at the same time, of making a nod towards them, because it was great games that we actually wanted to make an homage towards. But at the same time, all of these kind of recognizable characters helped a lot for the user to feel this nostalgia and kind of going inside of their head to a time that was when they were kids. As for the real life characters, we made a really good decision for us to stylize these characters on the character design. That way, it was actually we wanted to move away from the more realistic representation and accentuate their narrative elements through stylization. That was actually very good because it actually helped us to reduce the cost of making lifelike characters and 3D models, which are very expensive and costly to make. And at the same time, we designed their personalities and looks based on recognizable archetypes from other characters in popular media in the 90s. So that way it actually plays up to all of this feel that you are kind of playing an episode of maybe from a TV show or a movie that you would have seen back then. And that actually, people really liked that. We saw lots of people actually talking about that. It was a really nice nod to that era. I hope you like this segment, and I'm going to introduce now Rafael Langoni, who is the master behind the music of Pixel Ripped. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Rafael Langoni. I worked with Mon Sailor on the music of Pixel Ripped 1995. And this was an amazing experience because we could deal directly with musicalization, which is the process on which we as human beings learn to enjoy and understand music, right? From an early age, my musicalization was done mostly by a Sega Genesis console, Mega Drive. And I remember when I was little, I was really scared of the Robotnik theme song at the end of the Green Hill Zone. And that made such a lasting impact of me. I think up to this day, every time I want to write scary music, there's a bit of Robotnik on it. I used to run to my parents' bedroom every time I got to the boss. And that made me never finish Green Hill Zone. I had to call my dad to finish it for me. So I guess most of the process was really letting loose and writing music as our past selves would love to hear them, would actually understand them. And I'd like to show you the first video on which we have the same theme going through different consoles. The Game Boy, the Sega Genesis / Mega Drive, and the PlayStation 1. We have a specialized team member on trackers, and he transcribed all the compositions and arranged them for these consoles. So we actually captured the game on the original hardware. Here is the video running on we moved to a Genesis / Mega Drive. Yeah, so this was a great experience for all of us. We loved every second of it. And we also had the challenge of deciding what was the music like on the real world, right? So initially we wanted to make it very contrasting to the game world and bring in all kinds of instruments and orchestra and stuff. But then we realized that chip style was the right answer in the sense that it would make even a better perceived contrast to the music in-game, where we specialize the game sounds and bring them to modern synthesis. And I wanted to show you the second video, which is of a section in the game where the boss actually comes out of the television screen, and that makes the music change as well to from chiptune to chip style. So that was really a new dimension for us to go about it, and very nice to explore how the limitations can help us tell this story and help us really localize the game on the consoles that are showing, right? So yeah, loved doing it. Thanks, Ana. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Langoni, and thank you, the team, for being here supporting me at this talk and with all this amazing information. I'm really lucky to be working with so many talented people. And I would like to conclude this talk just telling you guys that if you're looking for making your game more immersive, it really helps to try to look for some familiar memories, some familiarity, some things that will make player feel more comfortable and more used to in your game. If you're looking to make this game more immersive, it really sets the tone and for a more immersive experience. Using those nostalgic memories will really make your players bound to your game and make it possible for them to jump in your world, the world you created, and feel totally there, immersive, and have a much more enjoyable experience. So I hope that you enjoy our talk. Thank you.
Thank you all to all our team for amazing lecture, and it's really interesting to hear about making VR games and making such interesting VR experience and reference to our childhood games, so on. So the first question from our audience: nice idea for a game. Do you think this game may be a game with augmented reality for mobile phones?
Barbara?
Sorry, I didn't catch the question.
The guy asking about how do you think about this game, but making as augmented reality for mobile phones? Do you think this game possible on
Ye-
this format?
Well, I think it would be possible for sure. We don't have any plans to do that yet, but um, with the Pixel Rift series, we're trying to advance in time with each, or go back in time with each game. So Ana has 5 episodes planned, and she keeps saying that. And so maybe in the future we can have a Pixel Rift in another time, and we are trying to play with the mobile games as a reference. So it would be a great opportunity to make an augmented reality game. I think it would be really good experience.
For me, it's okay as long as you use headphones. If you're using headphones, it's all fine.
Yeah,
Okay.
we have a disclaimer: play this game with headphones on.
Mikhail asking, incredible concept and methods. However, did you understand your target audience for your innovative games? Was there research or you just making games for yourself?
We always try to think about our target audience. I think it really helps that Ana is kind of like the representation of our target audience. But we're not trying to make games for ourselves. We're trying to make games that we enjoy, that we think it's going to be a good game to be in the universe. We're not going to make a game just because I think this will make a lot of money if our hearts aren't in it. But it's about the audience. I mean, the game doesn't exist if people don't play it. So we're always trying to think about our players. We make a lot of player tests, trying to find the through our audience, try to talk with the community and ask players of previous games to try out the next ones. So we're really committed to making a game that our audience will enjoy as well. But it helps that Ana is a good representation of them.
Yeah, because the question about the audience is on the surface. It means like this game are based on nostalgic 8-bit era classic games, but you're playing as a child, so it's a question: this game for child or for adults, and how you solve this for in your marketing, how you target onto your audience.
So our main audience is always, we're trying to think of people that played the games when they were kids. So nowadays they would be around their 30s, 40s. And it is at the moment, the main audience from VR are people that are older. There were still some problems in the past if kids should be playing VR or not. But we're seeing that the audience is changing, and there are a lot more kids playing the games in VR. And we were really happy to see that there are kids that are playing our games and they are enjoying it as well. And we never try to think this game will not be understood by somebody that didn't live in the 90s. I mean, I was born in 1995, and I wrote the story. So and we have a very diverse group working on the game. So we have people from different ages, from different backgrounds, and we always try to have the whole team working together and giving their own opinions. And I'm sorry, my dogs are barking at the moment. I don't know if you can hear them. And so it really helped to have this diverse view. And if some of us weren't into the game, weren't understanding, we try to work around it and see how to make it as open as possible for different audience. And I think it really paid off in the end, because we have people. It's really rewarding to read the comments there, like, I never played those games. I didn't. I wasn't born in the 90s yet, but I feel like I've experienced the 90s now, and it's really cool.
Mhm.
Also, I think one of the greatest strengths of the game is making older people, older by older I mean our generation, show their kids the game. Like we saw an Instagram post by Tony Hawk, who had his child playing the game, and he was like, "Wow, gameception!" And it's interesting to see somebody introduce the concept of older games this way. Like our game is the first reference a child has of older games of the 90s, so it's pretty crazy.
Cool. But it's interesting question. How do you start this game? How do you start this conception? How you come to idea to make the game based on old classic?
Well, the first Pixel Ripped come to Ana as a dream. Actually, she had a dream about the whole concept. But in Pixel Ripped 1995, it was more of a group project. And at the beginning, it was a lot about everyone sharing their own childhood memories. So a lot of the experience is shared throughout the group. So they were talking about, going to the rental store and being on the back seat. It's an experience that many people in the group had. And as the game progresses and the story progresses, it was always about sharing stories and memories, and trying to figure out what spoke to more people.
Mhm. Thank you. And the more question from our audience. How you keep restore immersion when you are interrupted by real world?
I'm sorry?
It's a question about how you keep or restore immersion when you're interrupted by real world. Like you are playing in the game and someone asks you about something, you put your helmet off, put your helmet on, and how to keep it immersion. It's a question.
Maybe you
Well,
shoot them with a Nerf gun, right? Like in the
yeah.
game.
So our game is about being interrupted when you are playing a game. So I think it adds to the immersion. But actually, we had a lot of people talking about it, that they were so immersed in the game that sometimes something happened in the real world, the real actual world, and they would think it happened in the game, like doors being opened, and they would look at the door inside the game, and they realize, oh no, it's actually my living room. And VR is very powerful with immersion, so I don't think it's a really big problem. We are used to playing a game and being interrupted, so it's part of life.
Just to make what Barbara is saying clear, Pixel Ripped is a game where you play as a child playing games. So you're in the position of someone who is playing a game and being interrupted by your mom and other stage hazards, so to say. So I guess this is what she's saying. When you get interrupted from the outside world, it's kind of confusing because it's a three-layer situation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so yes, you're trapped by your mom and you're interrupted by your real mom, and you need to decide what happens. Okay. What about the interrupting of NPC? It's usual and common behavior in VR when you can grab some items and you want to interact with other persons, like throwing it or putting it at. Should the persons react on it or not? Because it's some not gameplay behavior. Not normal gameplay behavior. It's like trying to break the game with such kind of behavior.
Well, when you're playing, you're designing for VR, it's really important to think about all the VR affordance you can give the player. People like to interact with things. It makes the world feel more real, more immersive. So, and that's something that we really prioritize to have objects around the player. And it adds to the story as well because players can grab like magazines and there will be like a little joke or something from the time, or it's a foreshadowing about something that will happen in the future. But we also had to be very careful and not to give them the power to break the game. So, for example, we really wanted the moment with Mike at the beginning of the story. We have Mike is like your nemesis, your neighbor, who he's like a bully to your player, not your character. And as he is introduced, he's being he's being really annoying, and everyone hates him from the start. And people always try to grab stuff and throw at him. Everyone tried to do that. So we had to make sure that the physics would not allow the stuff to actually get there. We had to try that out. And whenever we realized that an object could be thrown at somebody, we made the character react to it. So we have, there's a point in the rental store when you have a lot of little video games that you can actually take, like the case of the video game. And if you try to, you can throw it at Mike at that time. So we have we recorded a voice line for Mike saying like, "Oh, stop it!" So we really wanted the world to be very reactive to the player.
Okay, and let's talk not only about your game, but we also very interesting about the game industry in Brazil because the most of our audience are from the current audience of DevGAMM conference are from Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, other side of the world. So the question is, what is your take on Brazil game dev industry and VR segment of it? What are challenges and opportunities for local and foreign game developers in your region? Very wide questions. Um, I will duplicate it in our chat.
Um, well, I think the interesting thing about the VR segment is that all of the countries are beginning entering into this new segment of entertainment and art together. So it's like we're in the game industry as a whole. I think Brazil is not really on the same level as the United States or Europe in general. And but in VR, it's a different story because we still are discovering how to use that art, how to explore the medium, and it's really rewarding to see how in the last award ceremonies, it's not just the United States getting all of the awards, you know. So this year, actually, our company, ARVORE Immersive Experiences, we had another experience in VR. It's called The Line, and we got a Primetime Emmy for it this year, and we were really happy because that's something that it's the first time that Brazil got a Primetime Emmy award, and it's in VR. You know, it doesn't seem like something that Brazil is known for, but it can be known for it now. And I think VR gives this opportunity that a lot of countries are investing in this new technology, and I think we are exploring a new segment that can be a little bit more fair and not just one country controlling all the prediction. Or at least I'm hopeful for it.
Cool. And do you have VR clubs and VR cafe in Brazil? So the place when you can go and play VR games. Does
Not
it
really.
popular? Okay.
At the moment, because of the pandemic, I think a lot of those places were shut down. We used to have a few, but more in
Oh,
the
I didn't know.
yeah, in São Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, but not
Sao Paulo is
throughout the
different. Sao
country.
Paulo is
Yeah,
different.
yeah.
They're all posh. They have all the new stuff. It's different. We're in Rio here. It's the real world. Real world. Sao Paulo is different.
Mhm.
Yeah, throughout the country, you don't have many arcade places, but São Paulo and Rio, you should have a few ones. But with the current situation, I don't know if they will survive.
Okay. It's just talking about the trends in VR industry because for some people it's much easier to come to the VR club instead of buying a very powerful PC, buying the helmet and so on. But
But
yeah,
one good thing is now that the Quest equipment, you know, the Quest
Oculus
Oculus
Quest,
Quest
yes.
VR, it's a lot much cheaper. It's still not that accessible, but at least people don't need a whole computer ultimate generation, you know, so it's a little easier now.
Yes, yes, and I see that Pixel Repeat supported as on desktop VR and on Oculus Quest, yes. And
Yes.
what struggles do you have on porting your game on Oculus Quest? Because it's not such powerful as PC.
Actually, I think the problem is having to port to very different types of equipment. So it's not the Quest. The problem is actually having to think about how to port to very different equipment. So we're also in PlayStation VR. So Viveport, Windows mixed reality. I mean, we tried to port to as many headsets as we could. So that's the problem for our devs. You know, they have to remap the controllers and think, oh, this headset has this different capacity than the other. So how we use that possibility that as a different controller, there's a different way to use it. Can this make the game better, or we shouldn't use it because it's actually worse for the experience? So it's a lot of rethinking the game design for actually all the equipment. So it's really rough for them.
Okay, and so we are running out of our time. Maybe some general advices for the VR developers who working on the games and about how do you see the VR trends, some VR future.
Well, I think, at least I hope we're going to see more and more games in VR and interactive experiences. I think for any new VR developer, I'd like to say that think about VR as its own medium. Don't try to think about porting your game, 2D game into VR, or I'm going to make a movie in VR. Think about VR from the start. Think about how you're going to use it, the presence of the player or the user, their body, how being present in that story changes what you're going to tell. I mean, I think from the beginning, you have to understand why you're making it in VR. It's not because it's a trend or you think it's going to sell more, because it's really hard. So if you're going to invest in VR, you have to think what it's adding to your story, why you want to tell this in VR, and use all the affordance you can get to give your player the best experience.
Cool. Rafael, maybe you also give some advice to our developers. Any advice?
I mean, in general, I think it's something you have to do because you find a meaning in it. In terms of making music for games, you have to go into it with an expectation to do it for the art. I think a lot of people see successful cases of composers and such as an example, and they go at it because they do music and they want to, I don't know, be rich or something. And the truth is, it's very hard. to get to a point where you're really comfortable doing music for games and audio for games in general. And you have to do it because of a deeper meaning. You can't go into it because you think it's going to be a great deal for you. In general, I think. So for those who will actually get a lot of satisfaction from it, a lot of artistic pleasure from it, it's a great thing. You get to work with the consoles from your childhood. You get to actually record music out of this. I mean, it's nice. It's a great thing to do, and if you're willing to take the risks, it's a path of a lot of happiness. And I'm glad I did. And now we're in a group doing this together. So yes, this is it.
Cool. So thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Rafael. Thank you to all our team and for your amazing games and your perfect speech.